State Chamber of Oklahoma's Business Roundtable, presented by Cox Communications. And now, here's your host, Fred Morgan.
Hello and welcome to the State Chamber of Oklahoma's Business Roundtable. We have partnered with Cox Communications to tell stories about businesses in Oklahoma and discuss business issues. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a manufacturing facility in Seminole, Oklahoma, but we're also going to talk about education, and we have as our guest today Paul Campbell, who's the CEO and President of Enviro Systems. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Fred. Appreciate you having me on here.
Tell our viewers a little bit about your background and about your family.
Okay. I'm not an Okie, so don't hold that against me. I grew up in rural Kentucky. My dad was a coal miner and got out of Kentucky and escaped Kentucky to some extent. I don't mean that, but went to school at Indiana University. Got a business degree there, and then got into aerospace. I got a job as an accountant at Rolls-Royce, engine manufacturer, and then held many different jobs in Rolls-Royce. Great company, learned a lot there. Moved the family to Los Angeles to a new opportunity, and then this job in Seminole, Oklahoma opened up for me, and I took it. Moved me and my 6 children here to Edmond, so we have a big crew.
6 children.
6 children. Right. So yeah, 5 girls, 1 boy, and you know we're obviously blessed, and so that keeps us really busy. When people say, "Do you have any hobbies?" I say, "Yeah, I have 6 children," so that takes care of it there.
Yeah. And so I have to ask you, you're from Western Kentucky. Have you read the book Hillbilly Elegy?
I have read the book Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance. So it's there's a lot of similarities in his life and in mine to some extent. So I thought it was a really powerful book on some of the paradoxes in culture in rural parts of America, in particular in Kentucky. I think there's a lot that reads over to Oklahoma as well. So
I was going to say there are some parallels between Arkansas and Oklahoma and rural America. It's and it deals with education, which we're going to talk about.
That's right.
So it's one of the important issues. So let's talk a little bit about the company, Enviro Systems Inc. You're the president, CEO. Tell us what the company does and how many employees do you have?
Okay. So we are in aviation. We make environmental control systems for airplanes and helicopters. And
what does that mean?
That's a fancy way of saying air conditioners.
Okay.
So we make air conditioners. We do more than that. We do cabin pressurization systems and bleed air systems. So we manage the air within the aircraft and getting it out. So important function actually. But there in Little Old Seminole, we design, not only manufacture, but we design, manufacture, and repair there. Today we have 185 employees.
Wow.
A good mixture of CNC machinists and skilled workforce. We have about 25 engineers. A good blend of professional staff there. So it's a great company. We really pride ourselves in being one of the best places to work in Oklahoma, we like to say. And we do a lot to give back to the community and get our employees involved in being good citizens. Being great citizens, actually, is one of our core values.
Mm-hmm. And when we think of aerospace in Oklahoma, which has been growing rapidly, we typically think of Oklahoma City and Tulsa communities.
That's right.
Why Seminole? How did the company end in Seminole?
Well, in 1978, a gentleman by the name of Walt Cartwright got some incentives to put the business there. I think Walt still lives in Edmond, and he took the business from nothing to a $3-4 million a year business, and then sold it to a gentleman in the late 90s who had a lot of experience in aerospace and really scaled the business to, for the most part, what it is today. So in the late 2014, Craig Froelich, who was the second owner and the second CEO of the company, sold it to a French company who I work for now. So they've been at the helm for 2 years. So there's a lot of stability within the company. The employee turnover is low, and I'm really proud to be only the 3rd CEO of the company in what will be 40 years next year. So
wow.
It's an honor to be there.
And these are really good paying jobs. Yeah. And talk a little bit about that.
So our minimum wage is $12 an hour. We have a plan by the end of the decade to get it to $15 an hour. It's gone from 10 to 12 just in the past 2 years. So we really believe that the working class folks have been left behind, middle class has been left behind to some extent, and we can afford, we're blessed, we're lucky enough to afford to be able to raise that. But we're also lucky enough to attract the skilled workforce that we need, and working with the local career techs has been amazing for us. Gordon Cooper in Shawnee provides a great service to us, and great partnership, if you will. We do have a lot of six-figure employees, six-figure incomes. We have some of the best engineers literally on the planet when it comes to environmental control systems. Our engineers are being actively recruited. In fact, we lost one of our best and brightest to SpaceX out in Los Angeles, which was okay. But for the most part, we can compete with folks in the region within aerospace, not only from a salary perspective, but we spend a lot of time on benefits and intangible benefits. Just as an example, if you buy a home in Seminole County, we put $4,000 towards the down payment of your house. Regardless if you're early 20s or early 50s, if you're buying a home, we're going to help you buy it, and the closer to our plant, the more incentives you get. We also do full tuition reimbursement for our employees. In fact, just this morning I signed off on 4 employees going back to college. We just had 4 graduate last week from local universities, completely paid for by Enviro, and it's, every penny is worth it, and I gladly sign those checks when they're due.
Yeah. We may come back to this, but we need to take a quick break, and I know you have a great interest in education, and so we're going to talk about that as well.
Great.
So come back and join us in just a quick break, and as we continue our conversation with Paul Campbell, the CEO of Enviro Systems. Welcome back to our visit with Paul Campbell, the President and CEO of Enviro Systems. Paul, we were talking a little bit about some of the things you're doing in the community. I would assume that Enviro Systems is probably one of the lead businesses in the Seminole County area.
Yeah, from a Seminole County perspective, I think we're the second largest business. There's a Wrangler distribution company that has about 500 folks. From a business perspective, I mean, obviously there's universities that have more employees there, but there are some really great companies. Blue Wave makes a great boat. They're in Seminole, Oklahoma. It's the Cadillac of boats, as well as a few other of our suppliers around machining, so on and so forth, that are in the area. So it's a budding community from a business perspective, and we intend to be there for quite some time, and the more the economy grows, the better for us to be able to recruit folks and to be able to grow with it.
Well, it's great to hear about the business, but I also want to talk a little bit about, you have taken on an ambitious project of starting a charter school. So tell our audience a little bit about, how did you get involved in that, and let's walk through that.
Yeah, some people ask me if I lost a bet. That's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true. But so in late 2015, I looked at Enviro's growth projections. I'd just gotten with the company, and it was clear to me that recruiting good folks was probably it was the biggest risk to the company in being able to do that. And after we lost a couple talents that I thought for sure we were going to be able to hire and move into Oklahoma, it became clear that the difference in education from where we're recruiting from, the Orlandos, the Californias, the North Carolinas, the difference in that education to the education that they'd be moving their families to was just too big, it was too long of a putt for them to get over. So I decided in earnest that, well, I'll do something about it. So I went and met with local schools, the biggest school being Seminole School District in town, and just couldn't get on the same page with them. We could have a whole nother show about just how that occurred. But we, as a friend that says, business doesn't do helpless very well, so I wasn't going to give up. And I started my own not-for-profit called Advanced Rural Education. And our intent is to really raise the bar and raise expectations by helping out traditional public schools. So we got some projects there, and then starting our own where appropriate. So we decided that we would partner up with some key other nonprofits and that we would start the Academy of Seminole. We got that approved in January by the State Board of Education. I'm very grateful for that. Where the school will be focused on classical education, pre-K through 8. The elementary school will be housed near Seminole State College. We're really excited about 9th through 12th grade. That's going to be STEM-based, so it's a really high focus on science and math. And it's going to be on the campus of Seminole State College. So that's really groundbreaking for rural parts of America, and we're really proud of that. Right now, our biggest goal is raising money, which we've been happy to raise $100,000 from Inasmuch Foundation, and looking for our new school leader. So we've hired a gentleman out of Okmulgee. His name's Ren Hawthorne. He's got a Harvard degree, and he's doing his doctorate work at Northeastern University on rural education. So it's a great marriage, I believe, and I think we're really lucky to get somebody of that caliber to come into Seminole. And I think it really speaks to the vision and the people that are involved with this school to be able to draw somebody like Mr. Hawthorne into this project.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting news. I assume that you think educational choice is important not just for Oklahoma City and Tulsa residents, but for rural Oklahoma as well.
Yeah, it's extremely important, and and you asked me what got me into this venture, and the biggest reason I walked through this education door was Enviro and trying to get more choices for our employees. But there's a personal aspect to it as well. I grew up in Kentucky, and then when I was 16 years old, my dad, the coal mining industry took a dive downwards, and my dad had to look for a new job, and so that led us to Indiana. And I got to go to a really exceptional public school in Indianapolis, Indiana. And the only reason I went to that school is because my parents found a cheap apartment in that school district. It had nothing to do with the school district. So I was fortunate to get a new choice in education just by happenstance, really. And so now I look back on some of my friends that grew up in Kentucky that were easily just as smart as me, and they're spending half a mile underground in a coal mine or working on machinery, and there's nothing wrong with those professions by any stretch of the imagination, but they were limited to those things because of their
They didn't have a
education.
choice.
They didn't have a choice, absolutely. So I'm a huge proponent of getting as many choices to families and students as we possibly can. And that doesn't just mean charter schools. That means doing some things in traditional public schools and making it easier for especially poor rural kids to be able to have more than just one school they can go to.
I know you cleared a lot of the administrative hurdles and some of the opposition that you faced, and I commend you for your vision on this, but what's the timeline for actually getting classes started?
So again, the first thing was getting the school leader selected, and we were really pleased with the number of candidates that we received. We were hoping that we'd get 5 or 6 strong candidates, and we got almost 20 really just great candidates from across the nation, actually. So the next step is to set up the school. Because of the timing of where the school leader is and some other factors, our doors will open in August 2018. So we are going to move that out a year. But our original intent was to open up just 2 grades the first year and then 3 more the second year. And so we're going to catch up, so to speak, because we're going to open up 5 grades in 2018 so that we don't lose a year. And we're also working with local schools, especially 11th and 12th graders, to see what we can do to encourage them to go to college and support some of their science and math activities there. In fact, Enviro, this is with the help of Advanced Rural Education, Enviro this year gave out $68,000 in scholarships to Seminole County students. I'm really just tickled that we're able to do that and to be able to fund 14 kids to go to college is a great accomplishment, I think.
Yeah. Well, I want to stay on this topic because I know it's a passion of yours and it's a passion of mine. So, but we need to take a quick break, and hope you'll come back and join us after the break with our guest, Paul, who is Campbell, CEO and President of Enviro Systems, Inc. Come back and join us. Welcome back to our visit with Paul Campbell. Paul, before the break, we were talking a little bit about the fact that your school is going to have a real emphasis on STEM. That's one area that Oklahoma seems to be lagging in. Why is it important, and why is it important to your business?
Well, it's important in general because that's where the economy, the new economy, if you will, is really taking us. So if you want a job at Facebook or Google or Boeing, science and math are pretty important in the fields that really drive those businesses today. And it's not that liberal arts and other focuses aren't important, but there's not a job I can think of where science and math and understanding that part of the world doesn't drive in and drive value to your job. For us, I think it's somewhat obvious in that we're a high-tech company, we're aerospace, and we did it for twofold. We want the kids in Seminole to have a competitive advantage and be able to have these skills to take to the workforce, not just in Enviro, but other places. But secondly, for us to attract the type of folks we want as we go on this rapid growth over the next 3 to 5 years, we're attracting folks that have families, and they're folks that put a lot of value in education, in particular around science and math. So we're really selfishly trying to fill a need for our future workforce.
Sure. The workforce is an issue as I travel around the state, hear from business leaders. It's really the number one issue. Many of them say they have jobs, they just have a lot of trouble filling those jobs with the right skills, everything from soft skills to technical skills. Do you ever run into problems recruiting people to finding the right people for the job or recruiting them to your community?
Absolutely. And I'll step back for a second. I would say that the skilled labor workforce, and I mentioned this earlier, but with the career techs, we have a nice partnership in place now that's helped fill a lot of that void there. But I'll give you 2 examples. We recently have recruited a guy to manage part of our customer relationship, and we needed that position to have an engineering background and also to be able to manage a customer, which seems counterintuitive to some extent. But we had to go all the way to Brazil, the country, to find this person. And we looked at several applicants within the region, and we couldn't find it. So moving somebody from internationally from Brazil to Oklahoma is not cheap. But you have to do what you have to do. We have a gentleman that works for us that grew up in the Ivory Coast in Africa, so we're willing to go anywhere and everywhere to be able to get the right folks in our company. Obviously, just from a business perspective, and not only from a cultural perspective, our preference is to hire Oklahoma folks. And usually we give an advantage on those, but we can't always do it. So yeah, it's an uphill battle for us. I do think some of the things that the state is doing with Oklahoma Works, I know what you're doing with some things at the chamber, I've been very impressed with. So I think we have a lot of the things going in the right direction, but we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think we need to do as a state to improve our education system and be competitive?
Well, part of this, putting this non-for-profit together, Advanced Rural Education, I've been fortunate or unfortunate, how you look at it, to really dig into a lot of the statistics. And the one that just breaks my heart and blows my mind at the same time is that about 1/3 of every dollar that goes to public education goes to the classroom. And when you compare that to states like Indiana, there's a lot of similarities between Oklahoma and Indiana, but states like Indiana and Kansas, we are way behind. So we have to come together and figure out a way to get more dollars in the classroom. I think the biggest thing that's impeding us, though, I'm not very popular when I say this, though, is we're letting adults' issues getting in the way of children's education. And what I mean by that is we got folks on the left that want more funding, and we got folks on the right that want to slash the funding and say reduce your costs. We've got to come together as a group. Standing on one side and vilifying the other side is doing no one any favors, and it's pretty bad in this state. It's really unfortunate, the situation that we're in. So, if I was king for a day, I would want both sides of the aisle get together and say, all right, first and foremost, what are we doing for Johnny student, especially out in the rural parts, selfishly for me, and how can we come together?
I have to commend you. It's amazing. I mean, one of the concerns we've heard about this legislature and is the lack of leadership and a vision for where we want to take the state. You're a visionary. I mean, you have been someone who has not only had a vision, but you're willing to expend resources and get personally committed to this. And I think we may see some more of that from business leaders.
I hope we do. You know, I've told a lot of my peers it's time to get off the sidelines. We've got to do something.
All right. Well, we're going to take a final break, and then we'll be back with some final thoughts from our guest, Paul Campbell, the President and CEO of Enviro Systems. Welcome back to our visit with Paul Campbell, the President and CEO of Enviro Systems. Paul, just an amazing story about starting a school, but it's expensive and it requires a lot of resources and planning. Tell our viewers what your needs are and how does this all come about? It just doesn't happen. You don't snap your fingers.
No, you don't. I wish you could. This has been very challenging, but very rewarding as well, and it'll be really rewarding when we start seeing some of the outcomes that we hope to see. Money. Just like I'm sure any school leader in traditional public school or even private school would say is something that is going to fuel a lot of the success. But in particular for charter schools, there is a handicap there in that we get about 85 cents on the dollar. So not only you can argue traditional public schools are underfunded, I know that that's what they argue, and I think there's some legitimacy there. Then you shave off another 15 cents a dollar, and it becomes a major uphill battle. So we got to have to get really creative on how we can shave some costs. You know, the partnership we have with Seminole State College, and they've been nothing but phenomenal in reducing some of our overheads and giving us space to work in. But right now we are laser focused on collecting money. And working with folks that believe in the vision of where we're going, not just for Seminole, but we have plans to go beyond. And I think I mentioned earlier, but we got our first grant of $100,000 with the Inasmuch Foundation. We're extremely grateful for that. And we have several other grants that we're looking to collect on here in the next coming months that will help us get off to a good start.
Okay. Now, obviously, you think it's important for business leaders to be engaged in education and in the communities. So why don't you tell us why you think that's important? Why should business leaders, and would you like to have some company?
Yeah, I would like to have some company. You know, I think we can learn from each other. I think so often on the business side, and I've definitely been guilty of this, is that we want to focus on our business, and rightfully so, and we expect to get the things that we want from the government and the community, no questions asked. And sometimes there's a context issue and we don't necessarily understand each other. So I think we need to spend a little more time and help folks in the government understand some of the importance of things we need. But probably the most important is listening. Let's sit down with some of the folks in education and see what their needs are. There's a lot of great talent within the business community, especially in Oklahoma. I've been blown away by the level of talent here, whether it's oil and gas or aerospace or health and human services. There's a tremendous amount of talent, and there's a lot of business acumen and business processes that we can bring to education to help improve things. So just go out, ask, and listen.
All right. Well, good luck, Paul. I know it's off to a great start, and I know you're going to do great things down in Seminole. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here today. We look forward to seeing you next time on our show.
Thank you for watching the State Chamber of Oklahoma's Business Roundtable, presented by Cox Communications. If you have questions about this program, email the Chamber at okstatechamber.com. Set furnishings provided by Scott Rice, creating effective workspace from the floor to the ceiling and everything in between.